Welcome to the Salty Investors, episode number 60, the big 60. It is Friday,
8th.
December the 8th, 2023. How are you, Tim?
Yeah, cooking up here. I'm thinking about all those protesters that stopped nuclear power, and I can't afford aircon, so I'm here sweltering in the heat. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's their fault. I mean, look, this is what annoys me about the green movement. If it wasn't for the green movement and a scare campaign around nuclear, we'd all be living in lives of luxury powered by nuclear energy. Energy would cost nothing. Yeah. No, I'm doing the same, but I can afford aircon. And I know you can too. You're just a tight ass. So that's what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, got any salt for us this week, Tim?
Yeah. The New South Wales state government is rezoning Sydney properties within
Cool.
1.5 kilometres of train stations to allow for high rises. I actually think this makes sense, as there's limited community infrastructure to keep this building, but it's not going to start building until 2026. Residents were asked, "Do you?" Residents were asked, "Do you approve?" And they said, "No, it's too crowded already." What I'm salty about is these same electorates have voted for higher levels of immigration, but they don't want them to live in their electorate. How do you round those two pegs? How do you get to that sort of conclusion?
But, well, that's what you call, Tim. That's the definition of a NIMBY.
Yes.
That's what a NIMBY is. Not in my backyard. Love the immigration, just as long as it doesn't come here.
Yeah.
Let's build more housing, as long as it's not in my backyard.
Yeah. Well, at least the government's actually doing something, and they're really, okay, well, we can do something. We can get rid of red tape, and, and I think this is actually a positive move, from New South Wales. So that's where they need it the most. Everyone's leaving New South Wales and coming up to Queensland and, making it worse. So they can solve the problem down there a little bit, to help everybody out. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's a problem with living up here. Everybody wants to come here. It's always growing here. We need some really bad Gold Coast mayor or something who makes things so bad people start leaving or something. Make things a bit cheaper. We need the Dan Andrews of the Gold Coast.
Bring back Joe.
Or Russ Hinds.
Russ Hinds, yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the tragic news in Australia. GDP was up 2% for the year, but the actual number that counts, Tim, is GDP per capita, which was down 0.5 just for the June to September quarter. And it's down, as I've underlined there, 0.3 on a yearly basis. So, that's means that your living standards are going backwards, and no one needs to be told that, because a lot of people already know that. They know they may have had a wage increase, but it didn't do enough to offset increases in inflation. They know that every time they go to the supermarket. I don't know if you noticed in the last week or two, a lot of things have gone up again in the supermarket. A lot of things I buy for my business, a lot of things like just the cereal I buy, it's just gone up another 50 cents a packet. So, yeah, that inflation thing, it's still happening.
And that GDP productivity number is, that's the concerning one for me as well. Like, that productivity number is still going backwards per hour worked. Like that, how are you supposed to get wage rises if your productivity is going backwards? And so,
well, I don't think anybody's had any ideas. I mean, I know there is the Productivity Commission, but I don't know if we actually do any of the things that the Productivity Commission says we should do. It's been far easier in the last 2 decades just to funnel more people into the country, juice the GDP number, don't worry about the per capita number, and say, look, we're growing. But productivity gains are hard, but I don't think either side of politics has got any ideas how to get there. Really don't. I mean, look at Labor just passed more laws about labour markets, about how you can't pay a contractor any less than you pay your full-time workers. like that. I can tell you that doesn't result in more jobs, and it doesn't result in better productivity either. I mean, it's anti-productivity if anything. But you know, well done,
Yep.
well done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was, I think, the Guardian had this. Even the Guardian's up to, up actually smelt the roses. You can see their GDP per capita going back. Household disposable income per capita. I mean, that's down over 6%, nearly 7% in a year. And we know that. We just got to look at the retail numbers. We know people aren't going. We talked last week about store traffic in some of those places are down 10 to 15%. Nick Scarley, Adair's. So we know they don't have much income because their mortgage payments have gone up, rent's gone up. It's not a good picture. There's our savings ratio. Remember that savings ratio that skyrocketed during COVID? That's all gone, Tim. It's back to lower than pre-pandemic levels. Yeah. So I don't see anything unless the RBA has a brain fart and starts cutting rates. There's not going to be any respite from this.
Well, yeah, that's the credit card. Soon. If there's a saving, people are using credit cards, and you know what the interest rate on them is. So it's a vicious circle when that starts. So, not looking good. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting come January. When January is usually a quiet month because everyone has to pay off what they spent at Christmas. It's going to be interesting. That's going to be an interesting time. Now, GDP's been pretty strong in the US, but as Hussman points out here, you can see that divergence between gross domestic income and gross domestic product. And he says here the divergence between GDP and GDI suggests an increased reliance on borrowing and savings depletion to fuel growth. This is typical of late business cycle behavior that often aligns with weaker job creation and slowing wage growth. And you have seen a couple of weak employment prints recently in the US. Weaker than has been. So, yeah, it seems in the last few weeks you've had more confidence in soft landing scenarios. I just don't think that's we shouldn't take it off the table, but it's I think it's likely that it could go the other way. That we're going to see. It just won't hold up anymore because we've gotten through the excess savings, and people are whinging pretty hard, about. I mean, it's the amount of whinging. I mean, I haven't heard this amount of whinging about how hard things are. I mean, there's TikTok videos every other day about how I spend this much money, blah blah blah. I can barely afford to eat or live or whatever.
But the market,
I don't know, maybe I'm.
Yeah, but the markets, finance stocks, banks, small cap, they've all had a bit of a rally in the last, week or so.
Yep.
So market's sort of looking through a little bit here somehow. And but what are they saying? March next year for cuts? Like, I don't know. What's that? A couple of meetings away for the Fed, and they'll be cutting. Wow. So I can't see that really, but that's what the market's. That's the narrative at the moment, and we're missing it. So.
Well, it's possible. It's possible, but just remember that when the Fed starts cutting, that doesn't usually result in higher stock markets. There's a reason they cut, and it's because things are bad. That's the historical pattern. Alrighty, we're going to look at. Oh yeah, we had a look at this smart parking. So you've had a bit of a deeper dive on this one, Tim, have you?
Yeah. Like I'm starting to hit the bottom of the barrel for Australian quality. So
that didn't take long.
No. The market clearly overpays for quality in Australia. So I've had to look for a bit of a diamond in the rough. Smart Parking is showing up on my screen, or their capital allocation is improving. The main business is hardware and software to run parking sites. This clearly has operational efficiencies over manually run sites. They have over 1,100 sites and up 33% in the last year, and about 90% of them in the UK. July this year, they made an acquisition of 44 sites in Germany and It only cost them $2 million, and it makes 1.1 million in revenue. Plus, to add their software and hardware, costs them about 1.5 million, and they can basically instantly increase margins. Clearly, management are not idiots with capital allocation, unlike most small cap.
Yep.
If we look at the fundamentals, the shares are extending, they're actually buying back shares. This is great for a company that especially grows with acquisitions. The price to free cash flow and PE are fairly reasonable. Return on invested capital looks like it's turned a corner and it's been positive for the last couple of years. Margins are okay, but if you look at operating margins, they're improving nicely, which is great for shareholders. Growth has been fantastic in the last 3 years, and they have a real access to TAM with their business model. But I just don't think they can sustain it. So I'm thinking 6 to 8% is probably more realistic. They pay no dividend, which is a great strategy for a small cap with growth opportunities, which I never see. And they have a little bit of debt, but they've got plenty of money to pay it off. We flip over to balance sheet and cash flow. We see they've got a net debt of 7 million, but operating cash flow is 8 million. Free cash flow was only 3 million due to buybacks, paying back debt and acquisitions on the debt.
Yep.
But it's still manageable, so they can still keep all those goodies.
Yep.
We're looking for a diamond in a rough. That is, multiple times harder to predict in the future. So we need to be a little bit conservative. If I cut growth from 27% to 8%, which is the 10-year average, the price to free cash flow currently of 16 seems about fair.
Yeah.
And currently it's about 15, so seems good. But if you cut it to 8, that gives you a good margin of safety. It dropped to 6 in 2022, so this could happen again as it's so thinly traded. The moat isn't as strong, so a discount is needed, and it seems to be run fairly well. If they keep growing at 10% and they keep the allocation capital discipline for the next 5 years, it'll be a multi-bagger. What do you think?
Well, one of the reasons they might not be paying a dividend is because might have something to do with Chris Morris, who is the founder of Computershare. He's the chairman, and they never paid a dividend for years at Computershare because they were growing quickly. I don't think they paid a dividend for their first 7 or 8 years listed. So that might have something to do with it. He understands, you want to invest in your growth rather than giving it to shareholders. I mean, if you can do it, and like you said, I mean, the addressable market here is huge. But what is their technology any better than anybody else's? Is it, I've got no idea. And what exactly? So is this the software where you drive into a car park and you can see all the red, and it says it's red that way, so don't go that way because there's no parks, but there's free parks up there and that kind of stuff? Is that what?
Well, they've got
a
couple of systems, and they've got other ones where there's sensors in the ground, so they can just do it in outside car parks. I think that's where they mainly focus on,
right?
Because they're manual type areas at the moment that are sort of rely on honesty and manual parking bays and things like that. So,
and do they operate then the boom gates to let people in and out and all that sort of stuff?
I think all that stuff as well. Yeah. So, but they've actually got software that parking inspectors to go around and check people and stuff. The old fashioned, just. So you sell that to councils and whatever around the world. So they've got a couple of actual segments, but most of it is the manual parking. So the thing I like is that operational efficiency. If you've got a manual version, and then you can put in automation, obviously your margins are just going to go sky high. Like, you're not paying for all people and cash and all that sort of stuff handling.
Yeah. So basically, you don't need parking. Whatever they call parking police to go around and check to check how long you've been there, that sort of crap.
But they reckon there's in the countries, like 100,000 sites. So I don't know how real that is, the TAM. You read their TAM and you're like, oh, I don't know how believable that is. But I went and checked my local shopping centre and they weren't in there. So and I'm pretty sure they're not in a few others. So there is a fair bit of competition. But if they get in there and got a good sales team and get in there, you'll be able to hold those markets. I think you're not going to switch next year, so but you need to get in there and get your sales team in there.
So presumably, if you go and park in one of these spaces and the software detects that you've been there too long, they send you out a bill for the, or I mean, do you have to pay before you get out, or they send you a bill you have to pay later?
They've actually got apps. So on your phone, it'll tell you, you're running out of time. Do you want to put an extra $10 on there? And so you can.
Right.
And so then, if you've got your credit card already hooked up to it, you'll, like, it's just taking money out of your account. Like, it's just all automatic. And that's what you want to see as a business model where you're adding efficiencies to the overall business, because they're going to have to buy these operations for what they're cash flowing. You're not going to be able to pick it up for nothing. The people who are selling it want to get their, what it's worth. And so you need to add something on top that's going to add value. So I think these guys are doing it. It's just competition seems a little bit fierce, that's all. So, but if the price is right, and they can keep that growth going,
Giddy up.
Yep.
Well, there you have it, people. That's a little bit riskier, but huge potential upside if they can manage it, but comes with a lot of risk.
Yep.
Okay, we might leave it there then. And thanks for bringing that one, Tim. And we'll see you next time.